Greetings, Spartans. I'm Paige Laws, the Dean of the Robert C. Nussbaum Honors College and Professor of English. And this is my colleague, Dr. Michelle Rosca,
Hello.
Assistant Professor of English at NSU, greatest university in the universe.
Indeed.
What we're going to be talking to you about is the Common Reader program. Now, Black Panther, A Nation Under Our Feet, is, as I mentioned, the first graphic novel ever chosen as our common reader. And graphic novels are a very hot collaborative genre. Genre is a literary form that closely relate to comic books. And indeed, Black Panther first appears as a character in the Marvel Universe back in a 1961 issue of the Fantastic Four comic book, conveniently reproduced and included in the back of the graphic novel. Dr. Roscoe is going to show you that.
Here are some of the older versions of Black Panther that were drawn starting from 1961 on that Dr. Laws just mentioned. They're included at the end of the story in Volume 1 of the new Black Panther.
And there's a little bit of the original comic way at the back.
Let me see if I can find that.
There we go.
Uh-huh.
That's where it first appeared. And remember that date, 1961, because we're going to talk about what was going on in the U.S. at the time. The Marvel Universe, very aptly named, is a complex, ever-expanding, multi-million-dollar artistic constellation of writers, graphic artists, colorists, letterers, marketers, and licensors, creative adapters, all kinds of people, and plus all the things that they create. Marvel is still led in part by one of its progenitors, the one everybody's heard of, Stan Lee, who is famous for slipping in as a cameo in all of the Marvel superhero films. And yes, this graphic novel was chosen because of the fantastic success and cultural impact of the film Black Panther. Also to be shown and discussed at NSU during this fall semester. But be careful, Black Panther movie lovers. While the film shares many characters and themes with the graphic novel, the film is not a direct adaptation of the graphic novel, and their plot lines are quite different. Though the film was being developed at about the same time the graphic novel appeared, events in the plot of the 2016 graphic novel seem to post-date events in the 2018 movie. And movies are, of course, another gigantic collaborative art form that require years of pre-production, production, and post-production, and the work of hundreds of artists, technicians, and so forth, all guided by a director's vision. The close reading of both graphic novels and films requires knowledge of some critical jargon that Dr. Rosca is going to mention. And film and graphic novels share some of those things, but they have their own special jargon as well. So in our freshman seminars, we will begin reading the graphic novel by slowly examining and questioning the many methods, including both words and visuals, used to convey its meanings. We shall look closely at the covers, introductory material, first few pages, in order to suggest strategies for analysis of this complex genre. And then we shall move on to larger thematic and political questions for discussion and writing. And Dr. Rosca has a few samples of the political questions.
So before we even talk about the different methodologies that go into producing a text like this, like Dr. Laws was just mentioning, we talk about themes. And here are some ones that are potentially on the table. Here's one that's historical context that has to do with when the first Black Panther came out and how that's connected to the new Black Panther, so let me read this one to you. What actual occurrences in the U.S. and Africa during the 1960s civil rights era might have inspired the creation of the Black Panther by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, both of them white artists. How does the Black Panther Party, of historical note, relate or not relate to the plots of the graphic novel right now in question from 2016 or the 2018 film? So that's sort of an example of a historical question. The next example is a character comparison. So we would ask you something like, can you compare Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, as you know, and T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, to other pairs in African American history that took their activism in different directions? So such pairs might include Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King, W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Should we even make these comparisons? Do they help us understand? Here's a third example for you, having to do with the female characters. Consider the role of Wakandan women as scientists, warriors, queens, advisors, mothers and daughters in the movie and in the graphic novel, where two powerful female warriors combine forces to rebel. In what ways do the Dora Milaje resemble the Amazons in Greek mythology? And in what ways do they resemble the Amazons in DC mythology, the comic book world, DC, like Wonder Woman? So that would be an interesting one that could tie in some pop culture to Black Panther in all of its forms. And then the last example here would be a last example of a discussion question. In what ways is the Marvel universe more conservative than many people in the US? In what ways is it more progressive? Discuss the portrayal of LGBTQ relationships in the film and especially the graphic novel. So that would be sort of another character study along the lines of human identity, which might interest many of you. Just mention briefly as an example. When you think about a movie, we know visuals are very important. We also know dialogue is very important, and there might be a voiceover, and you know that's sort of the voice of the controlling narrator. There's just so much going on to take in a film. It's kind of the same thing in a graphic novel. It's deceptive because it's this tiny little book. And it's like, okay, I can get through this and figure out what's happening. But I've been looking at this book in the past few days, and it explains that there's a lot of complexity in the way that this is put together. So let me just give you one example of that. So I don't know if you can see this, but let me just hold this up. You can see that this is in panels, and I know that's familiar to you, even if you can't see this image very well right now. And the little lines in between each one are called gutters. And so what a comic book expert like Scott McCloud will teach us is that anything can happen when you skip over the gutter. So you may travel 100 years forward in time or 100 years back. You may switch characters. You may change scenes. You may just jump from one second to the next. But there's a lot that can happen that can go on, and it's a way that the artists use to sort of jolt us around within the story to keep us interested. So that's just one example. These little things are called gutters because you never know what's going to happen when you jump over it or fall into it, right? So it's kind of a cool way, a cool word to express what this little technique does. So that's just an example of something that we could talk about in seminar or in our Go Gay Week or anytime we're talking about this graphic novel.
Thank you, Dr. Rosca. Thank you. So that's it for us right now. You're going to hear a lot about Black Panther, both the film and the graphic novel, and you're going to hear quite a bit about close reading and the power of close reading to help you as an intellectual and to help your writing as well.